Welcome to the Strength Coach Experience podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lego, and here we go. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Strength Coach Experience, Episode 4. Today, I want to welcome Chris Kievit. Chris was a four-year starter at Don Bosco. He earned a scholarship to LIU to play baseball. He got his master's in coaching and conditioning, and currently he is the general manager at Evolve Athletic Club in White Plains, New York. Chris, welcome to the show, man. Pumped to have you on.
Joe, thanks so much, man. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time. So we'll jump right into things. Why don't we start with, growing up and, how the journey started playing baseball?
Yeah, sure. So was an athletic kid always from basically the jump. It's kind of something that I found a passion in. Always wanted to play sports, kind of that's what it was. You were growing up with your buddies playing sports in the street, and then it evolved into, Little League, and then eventually Babe Ruth, and then high school, and high school took me on to college. I loved the athletic mindset. So I always would play, obviously baseball, that was my first passion, but, obviously the other sports were not far behind it. Basketball, football were always a thing. Basically right up until high school when I really started getting serious about baseball. My talents were excelling at a rate that I really couldn't deny, and I wanted to practice pretty much every day and get better at the sport. It's something that I fell in love with, and something that rewarded me. To be able to get a scholarship and continue my education, which then really, if you think about it, led me into my master's scholarship as well. So it basically opened up two very huge doors for me.
Good. So growing up, you said you wanted to play every day and you really got into it. Did you have any leadership qualities from the jump? Were you a big leader when you played in high school, or was that something that kind of came a little later?
So I really prided myself on being that leader. It really started to develop in high school. I always prided myself. It was a little thing for me, and I still pride myself on this today. I always wanted to be the first one at practice. I always loved to be the first one there. Nobody was at the field, getting myself ready. And I think the other guys, especially on my squad, really respected that, and really saw that, and I just took the ball and ran with it. I was always the first one there. I never really rubbed it in anyone's face, but I always wanted to basically outwork anybody. If you were taking 50 swings, I was taking 100. If you were, taking, 4 bullpens, I was taking 6. So I always really I felt like it was ingrained in my DNA to just outwork everybody, be early, stay late. And it really created a parallel into what, kind of my life is now. And it's kind of a pillar that I hold true to myself is put in the work, be on time, show up, really have a positive mindset and attitude towards what you're doing. And most of all, really have a passion for what you're doing. I mean, obviously it was easy for me to have a passion for baseball. I love the sport, but obviously, as we'll dive into, I got that passion and I transitioned it to coaching and conditioning, sports performance, anything really to have anything to do with helping people and achieving their goals.
Yeah, that's great, man. And, just being there a little bit when you were there, those things kind of resonated during the early times when we were in college. And for anybody listening, like I said, it doesn't matter what you're doing. I think you hit it now right on the head. The passion and that work ethic can help you out no matter what it is. It starts off in sports, and then you want to try to continue that passion as you go on to other things, whether it's coaching or anything else. I think if you work hard and you always want to be, like Chris said, hardest worker in the room, I think that's one of the most important things, and it will allow you to excel in any field. So how was the transition going from high school into LIU and playing baseball? Why don't we touch on that a little bit?
Oh man, so that was definitely eye-opening for sure. You know, being a high school baseball player and kind of being top dog in your school a little bit, and then you get to LIU, and we were a Division I program, so right from the jump, I mean, there's competition all over the place, and what I was not used to was in a college setting, you're basically thrown into that competitive nature basically in September, to where the high school season, baseball doesn't start until March or April. So, as a baseball guy, you're kind of, cruising along in your senior and junior season. And then, you're gearing up for the season, as opposed to in college. I was right in there playing with, really grown men. I mean, I don't know if I could consider myself a grown man mentally, maybe physically, but, I'm playing with the likes of guys that have played, at the college level for the last 2, 3, 4 years. So it was definitely an adjustment. It was one that I had to take for step by step, really, in a sense, because I had to realize first that I wasn't going to be top dog anymore. I had to realize my role. I had to, fill a need. I had to be able to do the little things to get me a starting position and or further on the depth chart. And again, what I always look at is the parallels between sports and athletics and what I've learned there and real life. And there are so many underlying lessons that you can really, really, if you think about it deeply, I mean, if you're trying to make a squad, you're doing every little thing possible to try and make that squad. So as a freshman, that's what I was trying to do. I'll throw some baseball terms at you. I was trying to, sacrifice bunt, hit behind the runner, sacrifice fly, basically get on base with walks. And really in the real life, that's kind of what it is we're all to try and get ahead, get the promotion, get the job. You're trying to do the little things right and make sure that it's not necessarily that you're doing it for show, but it becomes part of your DNA. So then when you're called upon to get that promotion, to get that job, it just kind of goes. I mean, and it's already ingrained in you, and it becomes part of your everyday life.
Yeah, it's a great point. I've seen it a lot, and you have too. When you coach, you get, kids that come out of high school that are, top dog, if you will, and you go to college, and everybody's the all-star. Everybody's the best player where they came from.
Right.
So it's really an adjustment to, even if you come in there with a lot of tools and a good work ethic, you have to kind of add on to that, if you will, because everybody pretty much is coming, from that mindset. And I think it's a phenomenal point you brought up with, anything in life. You're trying to get base hits basically, until you get to where you want to go.
Right. And I feel like that's kind of like the make or break for a lot of guys is really, and what I learned with, again, with baseball is how do you deal with failure? I mean, baseball really is a game of failure. And quite frankly, life is a game of failure too, because, it's going to kick you down, man. It's going to beat you down. I mean, look at what we're in. Did anybody expect us to be quarantined for 4 months, 5 months, however long it's going to be? But it's going to beat you down, and really it's going to show no mercy. And just when you think you're getting out of it, you hit a line drive that gets caught. So, and you think you have that slightest moment where it's like, man, I'm getting out of this. And then boom, another thing happens. But it's really all about perseverance, man, and showing up each and every day, no matter what, and taking pride in your work, and showing up as if each day was your first day on the job. You're 0 for 0. Your record is 0-0.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Like I said, with baseball, you're right. You get this, the biggest thing that separates that from everything else is you get to play a game every day and pretty much almost start anew, if you will. And life will beat you down. Speaking on the virus, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, and you have to have a positive outlook. You could look at it as, oh my God, we're all stuck inside, and
Right.
things are terrible, or you can say, okay, this is kind of a break. I spoke about it with Richard Luker in
Right.
the first one. It's a global break. We're all forced to take time to reflect, if you will, whether you want to or not. And I think it's a big time, whether you can, to really analyze what you want to do and, really figure out, kind of what the next step is and kind of maybe gear up, if you will, not to say this will happen again, but for things like this in the future, just to make sure that you're in a good place, mentally and stuff like that to be able to deal with this stuff.
Well, I think also too, I mean, look at it, it really, like you said, it hits the reset button and it kind of makes you evaluate what it is you want to go after. And I also think it crosses paths with people that and or places and or things that you may have, if you didn't slow down, you would have never crossed paths. I mean, look at us, for example. Joe, I'll be blunt with you. We haven't talked in what, 5, 6 years? I mean,
Yeah, it's been a while.
we followed each other on Instagram, but you get lazy with that stuff. And it's, you'll throw a like here, you'll throw a comment here. And, the guys that you basically spent a good portion of your life with, 4, 5, 6 years in college, kind of fall by the wayside. So if anything, I'm kind of thankful for it too, because it kind of gave that opportunity for guys like you and I to connect again.
Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity, like I said, and I'm, happy we get to do this. And the same thing, you get to reach out to people and, you get to rekindle those things and people that are important to you and on the journey. So when you were at LIU, we'll get back into things. When did you really feel like you started to come into your own, all that work ethic, all the work you did, in the early on in your life? When did that start to show as you were playing and going through the journey at LIU?
So I kind of saw the handwriting on the wall, and it's a pill that no kid, high school, college want to swallow. I saw the handwriting on the wall that maybe being drafted wasn't going to be the reality. At the end of my sophomore year, I actually tore the PCL ligament in my knee, and I spent all summer rehabbing. I was due to go to Alaska and play in one of the top collegiate summer leagues. And I remember for basically the first 3 weeks of summer, being just immobilized and not being able to move and really, really just down on myself, dude, just down and out. And I remember I was in our living room and I was laying on my couch and I was just, nobody knows you like your own mother. I was giving my mother
Mhm.
all sorts of attitude. And she finally looked at me and she goes, well, you either got two options. You can stay in a brace the rest of your life, or you can get up and do something about it. And that was kind of like the switch that really, really turned in my head. I got after physical therapy like there was no tomorrow, basically the next day. And in that transition of physical therapy, I saw how the physical therapist took care of me. And I really kind of made it a point at that point in time that I wanted to do, I don't want to say the exact same thing, but something very similar. My mentality and my personality is more of that go-getter and in your face, a little bit more of an aggressive type personality, to where physical therapy wouldn't be a match for me. But I knew I could parallel and pivot to the strength and conditioning world. So I came back, had a great junior season, was awesome. I felt great. That break from baseball really helped me, in a sense, kind of get back on track. And then, to be honest, senior season was not my best, and that was the end of the road. But throughout junior and senior season, I had been working with Richard. I'd been working with Kevin Duffy, and really just trying to understand the performance aspect of sport, the strength and conditioning aspect of sport, and honing that craft potentially as a coach, because I knew that could be my next step rather than going pro. So really, from that injury date And it's so funny because everything happens for a reason, and I'm a firm believer of that. So I think that injury allowed me to really center in and be around some really good people that were helping me. And in turn, it kind of gave me that bug and that passion to really kind of pay it forward. I saw how they treated me, and I knew from right then I wanted to do that for the rest of my life, or as long as I could.
Yeah, no, the injuries and stuff, it's a really hard time with a lot of players, and especially when it's the first time dealing with that stuff. And like you said, you can either, like your mom said, you can either sit in a brace for the rest of your life, or you can, come out of it. And what you did and were you able to
Right.
attack everything is fantastic. And everything does happen for a reason. I mean, I have it tattooed on my arm. I truly believe,
Yeah.
regardless of what happens, there's always a positive, or there's always a lesson to be learned, and there's always something to be to build on, and to take with you on to the next step.
And even if it isn't exposed at that very moment either, I mean, there could be a lesson that comes back around in 3-4 years. You just got to be patient, and you gotta see it, and you gotta be able to adjust and pivot and transition, and all those good key words. But there's a difference between talking about it and doing it, and that kind of that kick in the ass per se that my mom gave me. Like, I could sit there and whine and baby and talk a big game, but there's a tremendous difference in talking about it and then actually doing it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you have to take action, regardless of what it is, as long as, if you will, your steps are in the right direction, you're on the right track, but you can't talk about it. You just got to get up and
Right.
do something in order to
do it.
Yep, somewhere in the direction of what your goal is, even if it's the lowest level, or maybe it might not be something, that's going to happen in the future, but at least if you're going up and you're moving forward, you're trying to better yourself. So from that transition to, working with the coaches and stuff, when was your first kind of like coaching gig, if you will? When did you start like having a team and start to kind of write programs and things like that?
All right. So it was a little bit more untraditional because with Richard, my graduate assistantship, if you will, wasn't necessarily strength and conditioning. It was what was called, the athletics GA. So that wasn't necessarily zeroed in. I so wanted to be on, obviously, his staff, and I'm referring to Richard James, our strength coach, who Joe and I learned under pretty much, and is one of our mentors.
Episode 1.
But what I did, episode 1, there you go, buddy. But what I did is even though, and this is where, I think a lot of people could learn, even though I didn't have necessarily a strength and conditioning graduate assistantship, my behind was still in that weight room, learning as much as I could. So I don't think Richard could ever give me a team, but I was up with the baseball guys at 6 a.m. I was working with the volleyball girls. I was, shadowing, some of the other people that he had with soccer and basketball. And I was willing to put in the work in the down hours that I just basically had free time. And I thought to myself, I was like, if this is what I want to do, I got to be able to do the dirty work. I got to be able to show up at 5:30 in the morning when no one's there and get the weight room ready. I got to be able to come in when I'm dog tired after cleaning up the field, or, painting lines, whatever was required of me for that day. But I still had to get in the stuff that I wanted to make a career and learn about it, because I knew that's how I was going to get ahead, by really committing myself to it. So to answer your question, I never really got a team until I was done with my master's program. Like, we did a couple, case studies in class. But my first, real job was when I went up and kind of was interning for, a place called ML Strength, which was up in White Plains. And the former owner was the Yankees head strength and conditioning coach, and learned a tremendous amount from him. And he gave me my first opportunity. So that's really kind of when I got my first real shot at managing, programming, taking athletes through progressions. And on top of that, not only taking athletes, but in my opinion, adults can be athletes too. And that kind of leads me into where I am today. So that was really the transition from college then into, the professional world and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And for anybody out there that wants to be a strength coach, Chris brought it up. Be ready to wake up at 5 a.m, be ready to have another job, in those early times. And,
Yep.
your passion can be there, but a lot of times in the beginning, it's not, something you get paid for. You might have to do a side hustle and, but try to get that time or try to learn
Yep.
as much as you can. And, your side or your passion, doesn't have a time limit, if you will. If you have to work all day, you still want to make sure every day you're bettering yourself and you're getting in the gym and you're learning as much as you can, because like, we talked about before, at some point it's going to, come to fruition. At some point you're going to be in a place and you're going to be the guy in charge, and all those things that you learned, from grinding after your initial responsibilities are all going to come out, and you're all going to be able to use.
I love about what you just brought up is it, those little grind days, if you will, I feel like they really separate the guys that are just so, and like, I don't want to say so, that's the wrong word to use, but I feel like it separates the guys that maybe are kind of half in from the guys that are all in. You're going to really find a guy that's all in when he's up at 5:30, maybe even 5, maybe even 4:30. And then he's there until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Now, obviously, that's just a microcosm of what his whole day can encapsulate. But, if that's just the one thing that separates him from the bunch, I mean, I've had numerous people, and this is something, again, that I take pride in, when you're working with populations, each has a different appreciation for you. The athletes, what they'll do is, hey, man, this is I had the best season yet. Here's a jersey, here's a game ball. But for now, when I've worked with some of my adults, is something as simple as a text message saying like, hey, I really appreciate you waking up at 5 o'clock for, just me on a, cold February day. Yeah, man, of course, I got you. Like, I love what I do. And quite frankly, I believe firmly in what Eric Thomas says, that, he's a motivational guy and I'm a motivational guy. My passion wakes me up. I don't think I've woken up to an alarm clock in about 5 years, 6 years maybe, because I just wake up and I'm ready to go. Now, probably later in the afternoon, I crash and get a little cat nap, but I wake up like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, in those early days, you could stay up for 20 hours and all the time.
Yeah, I'm not a college kid anymore, Joe.
Yeah, it's crazy. You start getting tired. You watch TV, the eyes start to close at about 6:30, and it gets to be crazy. I want to bring up the appreciation that Chris brought up. I mean, I think that's great. I mean, I've had it in my career too. Everybody's going to appreciate you different, and it's those little things. When those texts from those people, and I'm sure Chris could agree. You have people that sometimes you don't even know that they appreciate you while you're training them, and then they'll send you a text or they'll say something to you, or years down the road, they'll thank you when they're in another career, and you realize, you're a coach,
Yep.
but you're really changing the lives of these people, and they take the things that you tell them and they use them now, and if you truly have passion for this and you're truly doing it with everything that you have, you're going to make changes and you're going to change lives. And just, I don't know if I ever told you this, Chris, but my first time ever coaching actually was in the weight room of baseball when Chris was there. And I remember going in there, and my first year when I was a volunteer early, I didn't say a word. And I walk in and this kid is just screaming at people with music going and helping guys lift. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I can't do this. This isn't me. Like, he's like,
Yep.
Getting guys going, and you can't even hear anything. And I'm just sitting at the desk kind of petrified. And I'm like, this is what I signed up for. This is something that I got into.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because I feel like that's really what our field, if you will, needs. I feel like we have so many resources and untapped potential, to where if we create a big group of just guys that we bounce ideas and network and all that, and we give each other those skill sets and those traits that one may be lacking, I've always been a big rah-rah guy. I've always been a big in-your-face guy. I love it. I think there's nothing better than it. But then again, I have to understand that not everybody is like that. But at the same time, what I'm good at and what you may not be good at, it could be vice versa. You may be good at something that I am completely lost on. And we have to be able to open up and have the conversations. We get a mantra as strength and conditioning guys as being these big, tough, know-it-all type guys. And I think the best way you can grow is, hey, Joe, what did you do there? Like, what was your thought process? Like, what were you thinking? Not in an attacking manner, but more in a sense of like, hey, man, I really like that. What can I understand from that and learn and grow? I work with a guy now. He's the owner of Freak Strength, Mike Guadango, and he's by far one of the smartest individuals I've been around. I love being around him. And quite frankly, and it's not to brag, and I'm sure he would tell you this too, I think he loves being around me too, because we bounce off of each other and play off of each other. There are times when he is speaking, most of the time, and he'll get a chuckle out of this, that quite frankly, I just shut up and listen. I literally just be quiet and listen, because if I'm talking, I won't really hear what he is saying. And I think there has been times where he's admired my work within the adult class. So it's important to basically know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and then find people that can bring out and make your weaknesses your strength. And it sounds very cliche-ish, but to sum that up, the guy, Mike, who I work with, Guadango, when we first started working together, he's like, I just want to be around 5 of the smartest people in the room. And if I feel like I'm one of the smartest people in the room, I'm doing something wrong. So that's where we kind of bounced off of each other and really focused. And I think that's so, so important.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I know Mike as well. I talked to him a little bit on social media. He loves you, by the way. We've bounced some ideas off each other and just talked a few things. But I think that's a fantastic point. I think that's pretty much, in my opinion, the only way that we grow as strength and conditioning coaches, in quotes, if you will,
man.
Because we all, everybody has a skill set, everybody has a different way of doing things. But instead of, I think it's been in the past, we kind of stay isolated from each other. We only go kind of around people that are just like you, where instead, if you're a certain way, you're a quiet guy, it doesn't mean you can't coach.
Right.
You have to find some way or somebody who knows how to get stuff out of you. And I think if we all just shared information, and we all were very open to what you're doing, because at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. We want our athletes to be healthy. We want them on the field. We want them to perform at the highest level, and we want to change their life. The dumbbells and the deadlifts and all that stuff, we do that as a tool, but we can change your life, and we do change your life, especially when you have a group of guys for a while. And I think it's a fantastic point, that if we all just came together and we all just talked about everything, and, we went to conferences, everybody was just free to give out information, I think it would just be better for the athletes and for the people that you train. And I think that, those are the most important things, to better our athletes, to better our population.
Well, if you look at it across the board, again, to perfect example, you have to be able to translate what you know to not only athletes, to basically any population that you're going to work with. So, I've always talked about and I've learned to try and almost treat yourself as you're like a Swiss Army knife, to where you can work with a Division I athlete, but I can also work with a 56-year-old mother of 3. So, what you're trying to do is you're trying to translate all this information, all this wealth of knowledge, all this help and charisma to the individual that you're training. So a perfect example would be, look at a guy like Richard, episode 1. What I admired about him is he had a way of just almost like crawling inside of you and bringing out the very best in you without screaming and yelling and being that rah-rah guy. I don't think I've ever really seen him raise his voice, maybe besides giving instruction on a field, but certainly not in the weight room. But his ability to get across a point and get across what he wanted was second to none. And I think the best guys in this industry and who are the most successful are the guys that are use that personality that they have, but also get the point across and find that basically that vessel in which way to deliver their point.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, as you know, with Richard, he does have that, he would just make you the best you could be, in his own way. You didn't understand it, but all of a sudden, years down the road, you would figure those things out. And I think another point you brought up is, if you have somebody like that, when you're interning, when you're starting out, it's important to go and be around different coaches that approach things differently, because you will learn things.
Right.
You can have your rah-rah guys, or you'll have guys that barely talk, but their athletes will run through walls for them. And I think that's the biggest thing. You have to get out. You have to, volunteer as many places and situations as you can when you have the time, because you want to find out who you are as a coach. You can't try to emulate somebody if you're not them. If you're a quiet person, you're never going to get out there.
Right.
If you're a guy that's aggressive, then
Dude,
that's going to be a thing. And I'm kind of in the middle. I'm high energy, but then sometimes I like to, step back a little bit. And, Chris, as you said, very aggressive, very high energy. So I think it's very important to kind of find out who you are and find out that person, that you want to be as a coach.
So true. You gotta be yourself, because if you're not yourself, people can see right through that. And if you're trying to be somebody you're not going to get you're going to come across almost as cheesy, because you're trying to be somebody you're not. You could have all the wealth, all the information, all the wealth of knowledge that anyone could have. But if you're not yourself, you're not going to succeed. Plain and simple, in any industry, in my humble opinion. And also, to piggyback off of what you just said, is not only do you have to surround yourself with awesome coaches and awesome people in your field, but I think there's an element that you have to surround yourself with people in other fields and other dynamics as well. Go into a high-end store, see what they're managing, what their manager is doing. Go into a Lululemon, a Nordstrom's, a high-end restaurant. Just literally sit and watch. The best lessons I think you can learn is when you just sit and watch and understand what is going on. You learn everything from service to professionalism to how to conduct yourself maybe in a meeting, whatever the case is. But there are some things that are great about the sports and conditioning industry, but there are also some things that need to be learned maybe in another field as well. And you can simply do that by going to your favorite store that you like to shop at and watching what they do. And essentially, it doesn't even have to be that they're doing it amazing. They could be doing it totally wrong. But instead, you see example of how not to do it, or you see an example of how to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. And for me, it was, a lot of my clients that are doctors and lawyers, I just started kind of shutting up and watching how they carry themselves and the way they're on time and how they talk about things. And you can relate that to this, and it becomes a phenomenal point. So going back into after ML, where did you go after ML?
So after ML, I went to, and ML was a great experience. It really kind of gave me that foot in the door. It allowed me to work with a lot of different people, and it allowed me to understand, okay, again, hey, I got to be that Swiss Army knife. I got to be able to work with a college baseball prospect, and then, at 10 o'clock, I got to work with a 56-year-old woman who's a marathoner. So I got to be able to, transition. After ML, I actually took, I don't want to say a step backwards, because that's not the truth. I have a tremendous amount of respect. I took a lateral leap, if you will, into the physical therapy world. And I signed on with a company to be an exercise physiologist for them. And basically, I didn't see the handwriting on the wall until a couple months, believe it or not, after I left that place. It allowed me to really understand the pathways of injury, and not even just, orthopedic injury. How do you work with somebody who's had a stroke? How do you work with somebody who has diabetes? So it allowed me to really hone that side of the strength and conditioning world, is saying, okay, hey, I feel confident in my ability that if, when again, talk about pocket knife, if an 88-year-old woman with diabetes and, a history of heart disease walks in, I could work with her and I could give her a dynamite program, and something that's really going to benefit her. We can't just pigeonhole ourselves into one domain, one specific area. So while I was at times frustrated with it on how slow it was, it really, really helped me get to my base level and my grassroots and say, hey, I know this is probably really, really light for me in terms of weight, reps, whatever the case is. But my given patient at the moment is going to find this to be the hardest thing in the world. And it allowed me to break down exercise and really kind of get back to that simple addition and say, okay, hey, this is my base playbook. Everything I do and everything I'm about is going to work off of this base playbook. And now it's going to allow me to become a better coach, because now I can basically just build off of my simple addition.
Yeah, fantastic point. And same thing happened for me. When I got done in the minor leagues with the Mets, I went to a regular gym, and because of my, the knowledge and the background, I started working with people with, diabetes, fractures, osteoporosis, epilepsy. And, at times, like Chris said, things are a little slower, things are a lot different, but truly, after you work with these people, they're the best people on the planet. You make a
agree wholeheartedly.
Yep. Best people on the planet. I mean, you make a change literally in their life, and they're so grateful, but also it allows you to go back to that foundation that we used as as an intern, or when you first start coaching, because you have to go through everything step by step. And these people can't, most of the time squat or do a lot of things. So you have to go back into that early foundation stuff, and really help them, move and learn how to move again. And they're not going to be deadlifting, 450 and doing crazy things. For them, it's basically, getting moving and stuff. I mean, they can get to those areas and get up to the, lifting weights and things. But for the most part, we're just repatterning them, and we're helping them out, and we're helping them live a better life. But I think it's a very humbling experience. And I think it tremendously helped me too, especially where I am now.
And Joe, I correlate it to, really, like if we go back to the beginning, and, I told you about my injury, my injury allowed me to get back down to base level and learn how to move again. Going to the physical therapy sector helped me get back to my base level and learning how to move again. Because it really, and I can't tell you, you brought up the point of some of the best people. I'll tell you a quick story. I had an ex-Marine who basically was out of, I believe it was Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. Tragic, just ended up tripping over his feet, falling down the stairs, ended up with a brain bleed, unconscious, and had some paralysis due to, the fall. We worked tirelessly, basically, for an entire summer. And when I tell you, the smile that came on his face when he was able to lift his arm basically unassisted is just something that I'll never forget in my lifetime. And it's, you mentioned that humbling moment. You work with guys that are so physically gifted, so physically talented. And then you get back down to that base level and you see a guy that's basically kind of in, down and out. And just to be able to lift his arm, that's what makes this profession so great and so beautiful, that you can provide that for somebody. You can provide anything from an athletic scholarship and help that vessel to get to the athletic scholarship, to an ex-Marine that's just looking to basically, in a way, feel like a man again and lift his arm and be able to do some form of exercise. And you have that power. You have to understand it. You have to be able to harness it and respect it, but realize how powerful you are as an exercise phys, as a strength and conditioning coach, as a personal trainer, whatever the case is.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic point and wonderful story, and I think, Chris, you're right. Those things, if you're going to train and you're going to be in this business, you have to, educate yourself to be able to train everybody, and those moments and those people like Chris brought up that you help, those are some of your, your memories, and those are things that literally change your life. Getting a guy who is 6'4", 250 that plays baseball to run a little faster, it's great. It's a very rewarding thing. But if you get somebody who's had pain walking upstairs for 20 years or haven't been able to lift their arm, and you change that and you see that look on their face and you just see the joy that comes out of them, without them saying anything, I don't think there's anything in the world that replaces that. It's fantastic. So Chris, going from the PT realm, where did you head next after that? And how, and then I guess I'll add a second question. How did that kind of affect how you went on with training kind of after that?
So I had, and again, this is how much the world comes full circle. When I left ML, again, at ML Strength, we trained everybody from adults to athletes. So I worked with a guy who, and again, I can say this because I know him. He was the most lovable guy, but also one of the biggest pains in the asses in the world.
Those are
And
the best people, Chris.
if you were exactly, if you broke down that barrier and were on his team, he took you in like one of your own. So he basically, fast forward, ends up buying what was formerly ML, and he made it. He wanted to have his own place essentially. And he called me up one day and he asked me, would I like to come up and manage? And needless to say, I had my reservations. I didn't jump at the opportunity right away. And then called me a second time. Again, not wasn't for me at that moment. Finally, he called me a third time and he goes, dude, what do we got to do to make this work? And I could tell in his voice that he really wanted to have me. And really kind of that's at our base human nature. That's all anybody wants, is to basically be wanted, whether it be in jobs or relationships or family, whatever the case is. So took a leap. It was a unproven business. We had a small clientele, basically 26, 25 people, and started what's now Evolve Athletic Club in White Plains. And obviously, we've unfortunately had to be shut down for the last couple months. But before we were shut down, we grew from a population of 25 to almost a population of 100. And what may seem like a small, some people hearing this say, "Oh, 100, that's small," but for us, that's huge because every person that walked in that door, whether you were number one or number 100, provided some type of value. And we were building, and still are building, a community. And that's the challenge that, obviously I went from, my challenge was issuing a program to an athlete, to now what my life has become is, how do I get this gym and this space to function as a community? And I think that's huge, is when you have that space. If you are looking to get into that branch of fitness management and potentially doing your own gym, or your own space, physical therapy clinic, I think you have to have an element, and it's probably the biggest element, is you have to build a community, whether it's your coaching staff, anywhere from your front desk to the actual people that come and train, because that's what's going to sell you. It's not the cool colors or the cool emblem. It's the raving fans that walk out of there that say, "Hey man, dude, that dude Joe is unreal. And I will refer anybody that I can to him." And that's really where I'm at now, is building that community for Evolve Athletic Club, building that community for Free Strength and the adult program, because, you get your core people and they're with you for, God, I've had people for 5-6 years now. And, we've started from nothing. And they bring people in, and that's where the ball starts to roll. You could have all the cool colors in the world that you want, but if you don't have the community, you don't have anything.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point with the community, as you know, Chris talked about, and I've talked about everybody on my podcast so far. We all came from the dungeon, which you hear me reference all the time, little dingy basement weight room in the gym, and we've grown into, you know, everybody's successful and going on, and that's what you're doing. You know, I think whenever you get into the fitness business, whether you want to be a trainer, whether you want to run a gym, I think you have to understand you're building a community. You know, everybody you treat, everybody's lives you touch. You want everybody to kind of be able to interact, if you will, you know, not that they'll ever meet, but if they're all at a party, you know, you kind of want it to be like a wedding, you know, if you will, you know, you want everybody to pick and pull different parts of you, but everybody kind of knows that, you know, you're doing this with all your heart and you're really helping them. And the same thing why I started the podcast, man, is I just want to get everybody to, you know, kind of tell their story and just bring everybody together, you know, and let everybody know out there that we've all gone through similar things, you know, regardless of where everybody's been, you know, we've all gone through some sort of grind and different things, regardless of where our path is. So why don't we go into what are some of the things you do at Evolve Fitness? Like, how do you guys train, or what are some of the techniques you guys use?
Yeah, so mostly what we do is we do a lot of, if I would say now we've transitioned from 85% athlete to now 85% adult. And I got to be honest with you, Joe, I love the adult population. So take that same guy that was screaming in the weight room and now put him in front of,
who terrified me almost into quitting.
Basically put him in front of a room full of adults. So now you talk about being terrified. I'm in front of guys that are basically guys and girls, I should say, at the top of their profession, you know, doctors, lawyers, you know, teachers, any profession, cops, whatever the case is. And they're looking to me for advice. And I have guys that are, you know, had multi-million-dollar settlements, run multi-million-dollar companies. And now I'm basically walking them around like a puppy. You know, hey, we're going to do this exercise. We're going to do this exercise. And not that there's anything bad with that. They love that. And I'm a firm believer and even strength coaches can relate to this. And everybody needs a little bit of guidance. Everybody needs a coach. I think it was the owner of, or the CEO of Home Depot, I think came out with a quote, you know, everybody in one way or another wants to be coached. So these guys come to me for their fitness and their wellness and all that good stuff. So a lot of what we do at Evolve is making the individual feel healthy, whole, and complete. If not when they walk in the door, definitely when they walk out of the door. So we'll institute, you know, different techniques where we'll, you know, I borrowed this from Mike. We'll use, you know, Eldoa technique where it's, you know, fascial release and fascial stretching to help their posture. We'll do groundwork and hip work to where, you know, if they have low back pain, commonly we see that through the glutes, the hamstrings, and the hips. And we got to open those guys up to minimize that low back pain. We'll do table work, stretching to release any tight tension in the traps and the shoulders. And really, this is kind of our precursor to even anything before we do on the strength and conditioning side. So we'll get all this stuff done before we even get into strength and conditioning or generalized conditioning, because we got to take care of these little things first before we get into the big things. So again, you know, simple addition before we go long division. So really, it's a whole approach to overall wellness. It's saying, okay, hey, how do I look at you as an individual? What do you need? Do you need, you know, to lose weight? Do you need to bring down, you know, get better numbers through the doctor, whether it be cardiac, respiratory, whatever the case is? Are you training for something? We have, you know, a small little Spartan population that, you know, likes to come in. And again, you build that community to where, you know, now the people that are around each other, the guy that needs to lose 20 pounds is bouncing off of the guy that's training for a Spartan race that's fit as could be. And now they play off of each other because each person, each individual has something different to bring to the table. So really that's the crux of it. Also, we do have a little bit of a wellness wing too, to where we have a sauna, we have a cryotherapy chamber. So really any aches and pains that they might be feeling, we can take care of with the cryo. If they just want to sit in silence and relax, sometimes I'll throw them right in the sauna and say, hey, listen, this is going to be your workout for the day. We're going to cycle on the bike or walk, jog for 20 minutes, and then you're going to go in the sauna, and I'm going to hold on to your phone, and you're just going to sit for 20 minutes. Because that's sometimes what these guys and gals need, is to just disconnect for 20 minutes. And that falls under the same umbrella and same realm as wellness. So it's become more of a wellness facility than an actual gym. And we provide basically anything that we feel that we can help with. Again, stress relief, tissue work, stretching, losing weight, strength and conditioning, we will do.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, as you said in the beginning, you're doing all the things that they need, and in the story with the sauna, you have to identify what people need, and you have to identify what your clients need, most importantly, especially when you have high level guys that come in and they're stressed out. You have to identify what they need. It's not always lifting weights and, going crazy. Sometimes you have to say, hey, you look real stressed out, let's take a second, or let's go in the sauna, let's stretch out. But like I said, I think that the biggest point from that is, you have to learn how to identify what every person that you're working with needs, regardless of what they're doing, playing baseball.
One of the guys that owns the gym, and again, excuse my language, he calls it the give a shit factor. You're really just kind of, you're listening to people. You're taking yourself out of the equation, and really, kind of ties back into that Home Depot owner. Everybody wants to be coached, but at the same time also too, everybody also wants to be listened to. Like, they just want them to hear, them to be heard, themselves to be heard. So if I can hear them and say, hey, dude, I know it. I got you, man. I know you're stressed. This is what I'm going to do for it. Oh, thank you so much, Chris. That's awesome. And again, it's not that it's fake or there's no passion or integrity behind it. What I try and do each day is approach it as a matter of, okay, hey, what is each client going to present today? How can I listen to them? How can I internalize it? And then how can I help them?
That's fantastic, man. I think that's a good point right there. So if anybody wants to reach you, get a hold of you, ask questions, or they're interested in coming in, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So I'm not really a big Facebook guy anymore. I think it's a breeding ground for basically all the experts in the world.
Yep, everybody has an opinion.
I follow everybody has, hey, and they're entitled to that. It's just not for me. You can follow definitely the club, Evolve Athletic Club, on Instagram. And my personal handle it's a weird one. It's Humbabe CK, or Humbabe _CK. It's HUMBABE_CK. And that's an old baseball term. If you really want to know, I'll let you guys look it up.
I think that's perfect, Chris. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it, man. I truly enjoyed it.
Joe, thank you so much for having me. If I could do anything for you in the future, just let me know, man.
Yeah, same to you, man. I appreciate it.
Likewise, dude. I'll see you.